And there's every indication that nation states are embracing it. Jerome Powell says it's a digital asset. Christina Lagarde says it's a digital asset. The head of the SEC taught a class on it. I think that people understand it's not a threat to the dollar, by the way. What's going to happen is the U.S. dollar is going to be the world reserve currency, and it's going to run on billions and billions of mobile devices. And the digital asset that underlies that currency is going to be Bitcoin.
GM, we are back. It is 2024. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Personally here, just had a bit of life admin to do. Currently in Thailand, just booked a wedding and some other cool shit as well. So that is the reason for the delay on the channel since the last video anyway. Rested, recuperated, chilling here for another couple of weeks and then back to the grind. But just an update here going into the ETF approval week. As we've mentioned many times here, January the 10th is the very likely date for the ETF approval, although it could come tomorrow on Monday, but I do think it will be Wednesday. So over Friday, there was quite a lot of chatter. US spot Bitcoin ETFs could win approval next week. We're seeing things like I's being dotted, T's being crossed across the board in terms of Friday's happenings and some of the information coming from the likes of James Safeheart and others over at Bloomberg. So that is on the horizon coming into the early part of this next week. If we just pull up the Bitcoin chart here, I did want to just go through the kind of year that we saw over the last kind of 12 months here, because it has been kind of crazy. And I just pulled this chart up recently and it did make me laugh. So we had this is Chinese New Year mapped out on the calendar. The start of January of 2023 was the first signs of revival from the market after being absolutely shit on after the FTX breakdown. We had a nice rally into that. Q1 was quite prosperous, AI coins absolutely mooning as well. But then we saw this, the major collapse in March, banks blowing up in the US. But after that, we saw that the Fed was the major backstop for all markets. They started to print loads of money to bail out these banks. And as you can see, Bitcoin putting a low here of around 19 to 20K and then started the moon mission a lot higher. We had another bullish few months here going into this period, April of 2023, and then the FUD really started to happen through this period, which was kind of crazy to see. Remember, they sued Binance, so SEC sued Binance, and I think it was like 2 days or 24 to 48 hours later, Coinbase were then sued, the absolute biggest shakeout you will ever see, suing the two biggest exchanges of cryptocurrencies on the planet. And then just a short few weeks later, after that shenanigans, we had BlackRock confirming they were going to bring out a spot ETF. So they said, look, we're going to bring out a spot Bitcoin ETF. We're going to put this to the SEC. We saw all the numbers. It was like 500 wins to 1 loss or something crazy like that. Kind of Michael Jordan numbers. And so this was the bottom for the market. We did have another correction in through September. We did not break the BlackRock pivot. So BlackRock's line in the sand was always going to be a very important one. We didn't want to see that one break. Hold the line was on the chart here. We did hold the line. And since then, we've been kind of off to the races. We've had some great momentum here for Bitcoin going into the 40K region. And now with the ETF looming, it looks like Bitcoin wants to spike up here, at least for another try a bit higher. But I am highly bullish on the ETF. And then what comes after the ETF, we have the halving as well. So 2024 likely to be a banger of a year. We're going to go through some of the information from others on crypto Twitter in just a second. Here is the Bitcoin dominance. So in terms of those altcoins, right about now, as you can see from that weekly candle, big green one on the screen for BTC, its dominance being reasserted. All the attention is the spot ETF. So we're seeing a bit of a pullback across the altcoin market. Makes a lot of sense. They shouldn't have the limelight right now. It should be Bitcoins and Bitcoins only. So that is where we stand. The market leaders, Injective and other coins like that are kind of just sticking around somewhere near their highs, kind of bull flagging right now. Maybe you'll get some nice juicy dips, but I expect things to continue higher onwards into this year. And ultimately, I would like to see us move into this kind of region, somewhere around 58, 60%, somewhere in that kind of region for Bitcoin dominance, fill in this gap and this kind of inefficiency as we broke down back in March of 2021. So kind of fill that, and then we can go sideways maybe for a period, and then eventually we have the huge altcoin tsunami at a later date. checking in with Google Trends here. So this is just for the search term Bitcoin. Now I may be overthinking this and looking at this too closely, but we have some significant numbers on here, 31s down to the mid 20s here. This kind of sideways accumulation in terms of sentiment, in terms of search terms for Bitcoin there. And then similarly, we have this, it goes sideways, it is just chopping around. Then we have a spike into the low 30s, pull back into the low 20s. And then this would kind of be the region here before the moon into the new cycle. So for me, it looks like in terms of this metric alone, we're maybe around December of 2020. And this obviously lining up with where we are right about now, January 2024, 4-year cycle in play, and thus we would have some giant momentum coming in the markets here. So a bit of alpha from Raoul Pal. So he says, these are the things you want to think about right now. And he uses the hashtag DFTU, which stands for don't fuck this up. So he says no leverage, which is probably a very good thing. If you aren't leverage trading, like you hadn't been doing it prior to maybe the last few months, and you're thinking Bitcoin ETFs coming, I can definitely 100x leverage long BTC and make a huge bag right now, which would be amazing. The likelihood is you're going to get absolutely destroyed on wicks. You've seen the predatory wicks and the amount of leverage in the market. It's there for the taking in terms of these exchanges, moving the price a bit. They can liquidate hundreds of millions of dollars. Free payday, why the hell would they not? He's also put no FOMO. So I think that is also a good lesson as well. You don't want to be FOMOing in too hard on the green candles. We've got red across the board today, just a few days before the ETF approval potentially. These would be better days to be buying rather than the Pico tops when you really want to buy. He also says to have 3 to 5 assets as a main bag. Again, this is something I've tried to do this cycle, have bigger bags, more concentrated positions, and try to buy the market leaders in specific sectors that I think will do very well. So I agree with that. Of course, self-custody, the next one on there. Get yourself a Ledger or Trezor going into the year 2024. As you would have seen, the amount of phishing scams online right now are absolutely at all-time highs. And so you have to be very, very careful. Even Antonio Brown, who is an NFL player, or is he a former NFL player? Don't really watch the NFL myself, but he was actually promoting a scam that was a wallet drainer just in the last 24 hours. Then Raul says, only trade a small DGEM bag of less than 10%. Personally, I would increase that by a few more percentages if you're really trying to make it. Remember, this guy is a multi-millionaire. He says hodl over a long time horizon. This is a good one as well because most of the traders on crypto Twitter will be in and out of positions in like 24 hours. They'll be long such and such coin. I seen someone trading tier the other day saying balls to the wall on tier. This thing's $100 coin. 24 hours later, he had exited his position very publicly and said, look, my just decision making changed due to the charts changing. So have your own plan. If you work a 9 to 5, you can't be trading these things in and out on a 24-hour basis. Doing less work is probably the most productive thing for you. Set your bags, have conviction in what you buy, and chill the F out. He says to zoom out, kind of the same as hodl. And then expect these 35% pullbacks quite frequently, which means if you've got cash on hand, you can then beat TFD, buy the effing dip, and then buy more of your favorite coins when the time arrives. Pretty good alpha there. Now into the debate of, is the ETF a sell the news event? So this one will come across from the Crypto Dog, 700,000 followers. He says, working on the theory that the BTC ETF means that we have hit a cycle top early. We just run it back turbo, double time, and we now need to crash and cool off before the next rally. Halving has no immediate effect. The catalyst ran its course, quite bearish there. So let's go through a bit of a supply and demand economics 101. So on screen, you can see price and quantity. So this is showing you the price of an asset and the quantity of said asset. So we have the Bitcoin ETF. We have a supply curve of BTC. It produces currently 900 Bitcoins every day through the mining rewards. So that is what the Bitcoin miners are all fighting for, those 900 Bitcoins per day. ETF comes, demand therefore should increase. And so the equilibrium price of Bitcoin should move from here, P to P1. This should be marked off at. Now, if we just move down a bit further, what do we also have? We have supply changing as well. So we've seen an increase in demand there due to the ETF. The boomers are coming to buy the bags. Perpetual bid through 401ks potentially, which is very, very juicy indeed. And that is, of course, just one of the greatest narratives Bitcoin has ever seen as well. There is just going to be a constant bid for Bitcoin as it becomes a very much institutional asset class. But point two here is that supply is also going to decrease. So what we get here, if a supply of an asset is reduced, the supply curve moves from S1 here to S2, and thus this should move the equilibrium price higher from here, which would be P1, into P2. So if you just double those things up together, you have increasing demand, D1 to D2 here, and then a reduction in supply S1 to S2, and thus you move up from price point P1 on the left here, up here to price P2. So it is just economics 101. We have two fundamental catalysts, one coming in the next 3 days, the spot Bitcoin ETF, and then one coming around 100 days. As you can see, Bitcoin halving countdown here on NiceHash, 120 days. So as you can see, programmatically, the amount of supply of Bitcoin is set to reduce. That has just gone down by 2 days as well in the last few seconds, which is pretty cool. So around April, the end of April, I think it will be, we will have a Bitcoin halving. You will also have all the asset managers shilling BTC for us because they want those damn fees, which is super, super juicy. And of course, for themselves, if they can charge, I think BlackRock's charging like 80 bips on their ETF. If they can get people committing to their ETF for decades, it's going to be worth billions and billions of dollars for that company. And so the amount of marketing that will occur around these ETFs is likely to be a lot bigger than what people are expecting. And it's kind of one of those things, I think it'll be like, in hindsight, when we see all the marketing they start to do, and we see how hard Bitcoin's narrative gets pushed by these guys, we'll be like, oh yeah, shit, it really is real this time. But as you can see from Eric Balchunas's tweet here, he's kind of quoting Tim Copeland. This was a Spaces that took place a few days ago from VanEck's Matthew Siegel, and he says BlackRock apparently will have $2 billion lined up to go into the ETF straight out the gates. Whether that is brand new cash going into that ETF to buy Bitcoin straight out the gates, so whether they've already secured some of those assets, I don't really know the semantics behind it. But if you start to see headlines of BlackRock have just acquired $2 billion worth of Bitcoin on CNBC, Fox, etc., it's going to spill over to the UK, we'll have it on the BBC, etc., you can see how FOMO can really kick up a gear. So this is super interesting to see, and there's going to be rivalry between the ETF providers of who can get the biggest AUM the quickest. So super interesting. And then we have GigaChad Michael Saylor here. So he is actually dumping MicroStrategy. He has a stock option, which was on a conversation. I can't exactly remember where I saw this one, but he's got 315,000 options in MicroStrategy. He's going to be selling 5,000 shares each and every day from pretty much now through to April 25th. And what is he going to do with them? He says, quote, exercising this option will allow me to address some financial obligations, probably pay his taxes, as well as to acquire additional Bitcoin for my personal account. Absolute Chad Saylor wants to own them all as if they're Pokemon. So we have the number of Bitcoin post-halving reducing from 900 produced every day to 450. Saylor is going to have an extra 216 mil cash on hand to buy the effing coins up. I think we can see where this leads. We saw the economics 101. Demand is increasing, supply is reducing. I'm trying not to overthink things and overtrade during these times. Sit on hands and chill. I think the market is going to do the hard lifting for all of us. And then we have this from the SEC Investor Education. This is absolutely hilarious. 173,000 followers, and they've just tweeted out to say, no go to FOMO. Obviously, this is in accordance with the Bitcoin Spot ETF coming. Don't FOMO in, guys. You don't want to be FOMOing into any assets. It's kind of like telling your kid not to do something you know they're going to do exactly what the parent doesn't want them to do. So this, in a way, I believe will actually cause more FOMO when you have the SEC saying don't FOMO in. Meanwhile, last few points here, stablecoin market cap has increased yet again. USDT at Tether just printed another billion stables. We're now up to 132, almost 133 billion in the market. Some TVL has come off a little bit. That is probably why the markets went down a bit here. People closing some leverage positions, but the overall quantity of stables is in up only mode. So there's going to probably be some nice dip opportunities here before the ETF does get approved. People putting all their attention onto BTC, maybe the altcoins get a nice pullback here. Some good opportunities in my humble opinion. But let me know what you think around the spot ETF. Is this going to be sell the news, or do we believe in the economics 101 that we just went through? And maybe, in the short term time horizon, we get some chop, we get some downward price action, try and shake people out. But overall, up and to the right is the play for 2024. I'll leave you with that one, guys. I should be back tomorrow. We'll try and put out some consistent content now, as I'm pretty chilled here in Thailand. Got a little bit of a setup as well. So hopefully see you guys tomorrow. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.